Do you need help making fantasy football trades? Don't worry, I got you. 10 fantasy football tips and tricks that will help you be better at trades. Number 1, know your team needs. You need to assess your team's strengths and weaknesses and identify what positions you need to improve. It's also important to know where you are in the standings. That helps you decide how desperate you are to make these moves. For example, if you're 9-1, and your team's been pretty solid with no major injuries, you may not have to make any trade. But if you're 4-6 and you're fighting for a playoff spot, you probably need to shake it up a little bit. Tip number 2, assess depth. Do you have a surplus of wide receivers and lack running back depth? You probably need to trade a receiver for some running backs. This will help your overall roster. You can't start all the players on your bench. Consolidate and fill your holes. Number 3, explore trade targets. Don't just randomly pick players that you want on your roster. You have to have something to give the team. Trading is like a dance. You gotta have the right partner. You can't just be rolling in there trying to salsa when everyone's doing the waltz. Basically, if you're trying to trade away wide receivers, the person you go to try to trade can't have a bunch of wide receivers. You need to find people that need what you are selling. Yes, you may want Derrick Henry, but if that person you're trying to trade doesn't need your receivers, you're going to end up overpaying for Derrick Henry. So find someone that need what you have. Trust me, there are more people that need what you have than you think. You just gotta go find them. Trades take legwork. This is what making trades is. It's gonna take some legwork. Don't be lazy. Number 4, before you make decisions on what players you're trading for, you gotta analyze the schedules. For teams with losing records at this point in the year, going into week 11, if you have a losing record, you need players that have a good regular season schedule. I'll post a video for that up here and at the end. This matters less for teams with winning records. Teams with winning records, if you're 9-1, 8-2, 7-3, you're probably on your way to making the playoffs, and you need tip number 5. Consider playoff schedules. If you have a losing record, you don't need to be doing this. You need to make it to the dance, not start picking out your suits early. Now that I'm talking strictly to the winners, if you know you're making the playoffs, it is critical that you find the players with the best matchups to ride into the sunset of the playoffs. For example, the Seahawks wide receivers have the best playoff schedule this year. You should probably get one of them on your team. I'll be coming out with a video soon about playoff trade targets up here. Tip number 6, factor in bye weeks. Now there's 2 ways to do this. If you have a losing record, you're probably gonna wanna avoid trading for players that have not had their bye week yet, because at this point, you need all the help you can get and bye weeks aren't gonna help you. On the other hand, if you have a winning record, you can use that as a selling point to someone you're trying to trade. Hey, they have a bye week coming up. You got a losing record. You really need to get some wins. I'll suffer through the bye week. And then the 3rd way that bye weeks come into play. This is a tip within a tip. I call that tipception. When you're making trades, if you can, try to trade a player that has a bye week in the future, preferably when you play the player you're trading. So when you give them that player and it comes time for you to play them, that player's on bye, but the player you got back is playing for your roster. Long story short, they lose a player that week, you gain a player that week. It's a win-win for you. Tipception. Tip number 7, package deals. This can go either way. I prefer to package 2 players from my bench to get a starter. If you have a winning record, your bench is probably pretty good. So if you combine 2 of those players together, you might be able to go get a starter from someone else's roster. If you have a winning record, I prefer not to touch my starting lineup. Clearly they got you here for a reason. Of course, if you need to trade a player from your starting lineup for any reason, that is okay. But if you have a winning record, your team's probably pretty solid. Now, if you have a losing record, your bench probably isn't very great. And if it is, revert back to earlier in that tip. Combine 2 bench players and go get a better player. But if your bench sucks, you're gonna need to trade one of your big boys, especially if you have multiple holes on your roster. If you need 2 or 3 players, you might have to trade a big wig to go get it done. It's crunch time now. A lot of the leagues, it's the last week of the trade deadline. You gotta get it done. In a perfect world, you're trading 2 for 1s. At the end of the day, I want the best player out of the deal. I prefer not to trade my one to get get there too. I want the best player. Tip number 8, know your opponent. If you have a fan in your league that is obsessed with a specific team, you can probably get a little more out of them if you trade them a player from their team. They're more likely to get things done because they want to root for their team. You don't have that attachment, so you might be able to get a little bit more. It could definitely come in handy. Other things like certain people like to have 2 quarterbacks. You can give them one of your quarterbacks. Some people like to have extra running back depth. All of these things factor in. Tip number 9 is one of, if not the most important tip that I can give you. Effective communicating. Stop sending out blind trades. Most of the people in your leagues, you know, they're your friends, your buddies, your coworkers, your classmates. You know these people. Talk to them. Stop sending blind trades and just hoping that they accept them. You're being a scaredy cat. And if you do know these people, butter them up a little bit. Don't just go straight into business. Ask them how they're doing. How's your wife and kids? What have you been up to? Still rock climbing? Then you get into the nitty gritty. You don't start with, hey, I want your wide receiver too. What does it take to get him? First off, that's too much information. You shouldn't be telling them that much. When you're making trades, there are 3 ways you can communicate. You can text, talk on the phone, or a bit of both. They all got their pros and cons, some more than others. The pros of texting or messaging on any of the apps that you use, you get time to think about what you want to say. You can read their message, analyze it, look up some information. You can have another person with you that you can talk to about the situation and brainstorm on how best to act next. You also have a record of the conversation, so you can scroll back up and see what running back did they want? What were they really trying to do in this deal? You can just scroll right back up and you have a message where you can read and clearly know what they are trying to get. And that can help you out further in the deal. The cons, conversations can go long because you're really just texting back and forth and people don't respond to text messages very fast. All of the things that they send you are very thought out, so they don't give you extra little nuggets of information. It's also a lot easier for people to be more stern through a text message than through a phone call. You can butter them up a little bit when you're talking to them, but when you're in a text message, you just don't get that feel. And then there's talking on the phone. You get more of a feel for the conversation. You can kind of feel when a conversation is flowing. Sometimes they'll give away more information than they really wanted to, and you can use that information to further the conversation. Like, man, I really want a player with some upside. Well, that kind of narrows the tree of who you want to negotiate for. You also can get a feel for what they actually think about the players you're trying to get. Do they really want to hold on to a player, or are they a little more lackadaisical on whether or not that player can come off their roster? You can find a lot of information out just by talking to people. You'd be surprised. This method is great for smooth talkers. So if any of you out there feel like you have game, this is probably right in your wheelhouse. Just got a different goal in mind. And then you have the combination of both. Texting and phone calls. I actually think that this is a good method. Start it off with a message to them, text them back and forth a couple times, then just pick up the phone once you get the conversation going. I still think that you need to ease into the fantasy football conversation. You can start slow like I talked before, but once you get into the conversation, use all my tips and tricks. Trust me, it can get it done. All 3 methods are good. It comes down to what is your style. I like to talk on the phone personally, but a combination works as well. I got a buddy, Austin. You know who you are. Man, this guy is a smooth talker. He'll have you leaving the conversation like, man, this guy really wanted to help me. Newsflash, it's a lie. He'll say stuff like, Mike, how can I help your team get better? Man, if you don't get out of here with that nonsense, he does not care about your team. But that is a great example of how to butter somebody up a little bit. You'd be surprised what a little bit of flattery will get done. Also, they'll give you more information. And the more information you have, the better you can make decisions to get players off of their teams and onto yours. And that leads me to my final tip. You don't have to dominate every trade. Yes, you want to get the best deal possible that you can get, but you don't have to do that at the expense of the person you're trading every time. You shouldn't go into every trade thinking thinking, how can I win this trade? Now, there are certain circumstances where you do want to win a trade. If you do not want to give away a player, which if you don't want to give away a player, you just shouldn't do it, keep them. But there are certain players you prefer not to get rid of, and someone is trying to take them off my team. That is a time where you need to win the trade. You need to make them give you more than what is normally necessary to get a player because you don't want to give them up. That is a situation where trying to get too much is fine. But most of the time, when you're making trades, you don't need to fleece them because you want to get the best deal possible out of them. The problem with that is two things. Number one, the deal may just not get done because you have unrealistic expectations of what you should be getting for these players. No, I don't want to trade you Patrick Mahomes for Geno Smith. That's an outrageous trade. And if you keep sending bad trades or you're not trading in good faith, people are gonna stop trading with you. There are people that get blacklisted in regards to trades in leagues. Like I get a trade from a certain person, I'm like, no, I'm not even dealing with that today. This guy never comes with good trades. And then you're sitting in a corner thinking, man, why does nobody ever want to trade with me? I'm always sending out trades. My league just doesn't trade. My league just doesn't trade. Well, maybe if you send out a couple good trade offers and stop trying to fleece every single person you want to trade with, you'd get a couple trades done. But because your trades are trash, no one wants to trade with you. Now, I'm not saying that you need to send out your best offer because you shouldn't from a negotiation standpoint. That's a dumb idea, at least not first. But you can't send them an offer that's insulting. Try to send them a solid offer that is a reasonable thought to where they'll look at it and be like, that's not good enough. Not, oh, that's insulting. The it's not good enough starts the conversation. Now we can negotiate. I can find out what you need. You can find out what I need. And we can do a little negotiation dance. But if you start with the trash and nobody wants to talk to you, you're not even getting in the door. So stop saying that nobody trades in your league. They don't trade with you because you're bad at trading. Be better. Be better. Trust me, you do not want the reputation of somebody that just sends out bad trades. That is not a good look. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't feel like you won a trade. Winning a trade is fine. It's the trying to fleece everyone that's overdoing it. I don't make trades that I feel like I'm gonna lose. I just don't do it. It's just not how I roll. Now, you may make trades that you wouldn't normally make if you're in a losing situation, but I definitely try to get all the value that I need from a trade. I'm not just giving you a player and taking your garbage just to get a deal done, because what's the point of that? I'd rather go down swinging with my guys that are actually good than just give you my players. No, absolutely. I'll go down with the ship. Absolutely not. These next couple days are gonna be hot for trades. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm coming out with 2 videos that'll help you analyze what players to trade, what players to trade away, and what players to trade for. They will be one of these. One of them is for teams with winning records, and the other one is for teams with losing records. The team with losing records needs to watch the video on what players have the best regular season schedule for the rest of the way. The teams with the winning records need to focus a little more on what players have the best playoff matchup. That's extremely important at this time of year. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell down below. Let me know if you have any questions, and good luck in your trades and in week 11. See you in the playoffs. Peace.